Hello, Contrarians listeners, watchers, subscribers. Here we are with another Contrarians warm up. This one is for our Halloween Resurrection episode, the final step on our Haddonfield Nights journey that started years ago. We're in lockdown back when we started that journey, and now slowly we've been chipping away at it, and now this is the final movie in the Halloween franchise, the last one that I hadn't seen, and well, it's kind of a gift, a blessing to finally be done with it. It's Rotten, Halloween
What a way to
Resurrection.
go out.
Yeah, with a whimper, you would say, Alex. Maybe a whimper of a movie, but a bang
A
of an episode.
wail from Michael when he gets shocked in the dick. Ah!
Yeah, there's no whimper there. We go out with Busta, and that's really all that
But
matters.
we do go out on a low of 10%.
Yeah, 10%. That means that we're going to be so positive in Contrarian's Corner. You will not believe it. You may literally not believe it from Alex. I don't know how much you can buy out of what he says there. But did I like it? Well, you'll find out when you listen to the episode. Here, we're going to go over a couple of Rotten Tomatoes quotes. We're going to talk about the trailer, over a little bit of trivia, and of course, the Josh Gad Minute. So let's get to it, Alex. Let's start with the Rotten Tomatoes quotes. And you actually read the consensus on the episode, but we're going to read it again. Consensus: the only thing this tired slasher flick may resurrect is nostalgia for when the genre was still fresh and scary. And I think, as we said in the episode, and I think it's worth repeating, the thing is that nostalgia can move from generation to generation. So your nostalgia might not be someone else's nostalgia.
It
And
can change shape even.
yes. So just like if Halloween Resurrection is playing at the nostalgia of somebody that, I don't know, remember Michael Myers from when they were kids, would there be a movie maybe today that would play at the nostalgia of somebody remembering Halloween Resurrection? Like, has Busta Rhymes been any other horror movies?
Not that I know of. I don't know how many other movies he's been in, period.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't know about. I can understand being nostalgic for the early 2000s era of horror movies that were either absurd or, the big turning point of the remake. Like, I'm one of them. There's plenty of people nostalgic for the Jessica Biel Texas Chainsaw Massacre and shit. But as far as something like modern that would prey on the sensibilities of someone who considered like Halloween Resurrection part of their childhood, I think you're locked into a one of a kind experience with Resurrection.
but could you see somebody that grew up with, let's say, Halloween Resurrection was their Halloween, like H2O and Resurrection were their Halloweens, and then
They were
since
probably very
then,
confused with the modern trilogy.
exactly, not just that, but they had the Rob Zombie ones. So it's like you had
Oh
five
yeah,
Halloween movies that were just so depressing and dark, and you could find somebody that goes like, man, I miss when Halloween was just a fun franchise.
I suppose.
So let us know. Maybe that's one of you listening. Let's go to the first quote. It's Brian Rowe from In Session Film, who says, here's another entry that can be completely wiped from existence and everybody would be better off. Alex, would you like to live in a world that doesn't have Halloween Resurrection in it?
No, because it's like a base level for people to be like, this is like we talk about in the episode, either this or 5 is the worst one. And it needs to exist so people can have something to agree upon. Otherwise, they'll just argue to death about, the sticking points of the franchise that they disagree on.
It needs to exist also maybe as a cautionary tale. I was like, it's there, so we
Yeah.
never forget.
And for its existence, it is interesting. We talk about it in the episode, and we'll talk a little bit more about it here. The behind the scenes is pretty fascinating.
Yeah. It needs to exist also as a ending for that version of the Jamie Lee Curtis character of Laurie.
That's
that
true.
multiverse needs to be so unsatisfying if you never knew what happened to her after H2O.
Yeah, she does die in this one, so that's significant.
Or does she, Alex?
Yes. It was part of her contract.
All right, and then the second quote is from Kevin Crust from Los Angeles Times, who says, It's not the worst film in the series. Halloween 3 will never be unseated.
Oh, fuck off.
But there's not nearly enough scares or humor to make Halloween Resurrection worthwhile.
Even for all your jesting, you would agree that Halloween 3 is a vastly superior film to this.
Yes, and it's more interesting too. I mean,
Yes.
just as far as what they were trying to do, maybe they have that in common actually, that they try to
Nope.
color outside the box when it came to the Halloween franchise. No.
Nope. There was like genuine intent behind 3. Resurrection is Mustafa Akkad and the Weinsteins, you know, with the fucking dish rag that you haven't washed in months, just wringing it out over the sink. That was
it. Yes, but you
look,
can at least look. You being around the horror community, you can understand how somebody would be like, "Look, I'll take Halloween Resurrection because at least that one has Michael Myers."
yes, and also in the episode we talk about where the original idea came from for this and what the idea was like, and how it has aged, kind of like where we have to stop ourselves numerous times and be like, nope, we're giving them too much credit for being ahead of the curve with like the whole constant content of webcasting and whatnot. And as a movie in general, I say repeatedly, had it been a Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play, something like that, there's a far higher likelihood that I would regularly watch it as like a guilty pleasure movie to this day. The problem is that it is Michael Myers, and there's nothing else in the franchise remotely like this that kind of takes his ideal to this level of levity.
It'd be interesting if there's a timeline where Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, was a success, and so we never went back to Michael
For
Myers,
real,
or at
yeah.
least not as much. And so by the time they are at Halloween 9, you put in this story, the story of Resurrection, has no Michael Myers connection. It's just like the story of these webcasters and whatever. And then everybody embraces it, and it's like, oh, this feels like Halloween because that's what we're used to. It's just random stories.
That is like, it sounds silly, but that's accurate, and that's how things like this work from time to time, of just like, that's where you fuck up all the time with properties, is there's these ideas that could potentially work well in another setting. That even going back to our Friday the 13th 09 discussion of be kind of cool, it's just not Jason. Like, there's some stuff in that is quotable, and there's some cool kills and whatnot, but that's not Jason. Jason does not work an underground system of tunnels to protect his weed farm. But you could.
Would you say Halloween Resurrection would have benefited from Willa Ford as part of the cast?
I mean, everything would at this point. It's yeah, but you're right in the arguments you make there. I mean, it's no like coincidence that to reboot the franchise they had to go from this to arguably the most disturbing and violent installment in the entire franchise.
It's fair. From the man who brought you the monsters, here it is. Halloween 0.
Oh, Monster slaps.
I know. Well, I know you think so. I haven't watched it. Anyway, let's move on to the trailer, Alex. Let's do some trailer chatter. Would you say this is a quintessential Miramax trailer when it comes to a horror movie?
This trailer is hilarious. I don't remember the last time I saw this. It frames it in a more interesting fashion of these people are signed up for this Dangertainment bullshit, and they're going to stream A Night in This House, and they're not aware it's Michael Myers' house, and then Michael Myers shows up, and then the trailer presents it as though Jamie Lee Curtis is going to show up in the third act of the movie as the final girl to like battle him off. None of that happens in this movie.
But they use footage from the movie.
Yeah. So. They piece it together. It's like a parody trailer of like, that is why people used to have jobs like this, the people that cut together trailers and shit, because fucking who's our director in this? Rick Rosenthal, him, Larry Brand, the Weinsteins, Mustafa Akkad just like barged into this like dude's office where he's got like the pizza box that has like a 2-day-old 3 slices of pizza in it, and it's like, all right, here's the movie. They give him like a rough cut of it, and it's like, make it look good. And then he shows them this trailer, and they're like, you fucking did it, kid.
The Jamie Lee Curtis part is like the
and that was Noah Baumbach. He grew up to become Noah Baumbach.
Look at him. From Here to Marriage Story. Wonderful. I love that Jamie Lee Curtis shows up at the end with the badass line, and it really makes you think that you're watching the turn into the third act or something.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I watched that trailer and I was like, I would watch this movie. And honestly, if I had seen Resurrection at the time of release, God, I would have been so mad after this trailer.
I think it's funny that, understandably, Busta Rhymes gets most of the screen time, and you barely get to see everybody else that goes into the house.
That's the main thing I remember from the trailer, not the way it was structured, but I remember the part in the trailer, and it was in all the TV spots too. His face is lighted up by flames, and he says "trick or treat," and then it like cuts away from it. I remember that from all the promotional material.
That was before red band trailers became a thing, I'm assuming.
No, red band trailers were already a thing, but for movies like this, you had to, so you could put it on PG-13 movies or some shit.
Yep.
The film's trailer was delivered on April 26th of 2002. I believe it was the attached trailer to a movie that gets talked about in comparison in the episode, and that's Jason X. That's the one it came along with. And then principal photography began in Vancouver, British Columbia in the summer of 2001.
Do you think the trailer for Jason X pulls a similar trick, and it has David Cronenberg show up at the end, like he's gonna come to save the day in Jason X?
Yes. Yeah. And much like Jamie Lee Curtis, he said the only way he would do it is if he got killed on screen. It's a pretty good working time. They started filming in May of 2001. Trailer didn't drop until late April of 2002. Usually movies like this are just fucking microwave dinners, man. Get them out there.
Well, I was disappointed that the trailer doesn't call out the guy from American Pie or God, what's Thomas Patrick, the guy with the special appearance?
Patrick Thomas.
Sean Patrick Thomas.
Something like that, yeah.
Doesn't give you any of the credits. Not even Tyra Banks. So Tyra Banks shows up with one line.
Yeah.
I think what you see is not necessarily what you get, but in a way, the spirit of the production is captured in the sense that Busta Rhymes reigns supreme, and Jamie Lee Curtis is probably the best performance in the trailer and the movie. Would you agree with that? Or do you think she's outshined by Busta Rhymes?
Well, I think the investment level... I agree with what you're saying, but I think the investment in this was creatively and I don't know how much financially, but behind Busta Rhymes. And I'm just looking at it here. Yeah, the first American Pie had already come out, and American Pie 2 came out the summer before this, and it's kind of surprising they don't lean on that more. Kevin is his name in the American Pie movies, Thomas Ian Nichols. American Pie 2 made $300 million.
Okay, but who's going to watch an American Pie movie for Kevin? You go for Jason Biggs.
It is funny. Yeah, you go for Jim or Stifler, maybe even Finch, and then you have like the
Jim's dad.
Jim's dad, yeah, fucking man, he had the most longevity of any of them. You put out a Halloween movie with Eugene Levy tomorrow, people are going to be there. But
he's playing Michael.
Yeah. The mask just with the fucking huge eyebrows on it. You would just think that there would at least be some mention of an American Pie.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a trailer. Watch it for a laugh. Let's move on to the Josh Gad Minute, Alex. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I kind of feel like Josh Gad could sub for pretty much any character in this movie.
Yes. I was just about to say, after talking about how much we should have boasted having someone from American Pie in it, my immediate reaction was to replace Kevin from American Pie with a younger Josh Gad. He seems like a good sport about things, and he'd probably want to get killed on screen, so he could also be the production hand that is the first guy to die in the movie.
The peeping Tom kill?
Yeah, it stabs with the camera truss, yeah. Other than that, I don't like any of the male characters in this movie. So, and you're not replacing Busta Rhymes. You're not taking away the main talking point of this movie. So, I guess Sean Patrick Thomas, he could replace him. I don't know if it would still be a special appearance by, but You have a couple options, but the other guy in the house I can't fucking stand. That guy who just is like there to be horny.
The guy that gets laid or half laid.
Yes.
Latest
Um,
interruptus.
so in thinking of like him actually getting lines and
Oh, he can be. He maybe he's not in the house. He's Deckard.
oh yeah, he definitely can be Deckard. Yeah, that's a good call because younger Gad you could buy in that role of met this girl online and in the infant days of the internet he's like wise to its ideas. Or you could just go for the cheap pop of the cameo of him being the guy who's obsessed with serial killers who's in the institution at the beginning
Oh, the prologue.
that
Yeah.
Michael bequeaths his knife to. Yeah.
Man, can you imagine? And then people are waiting the entire movie for him to come back. Is he
Where'd
gonna
Josh
save the
Gad
day?
go?
Yeah. All right. Well, Josh Gad, when the inevitable Halloween Resurrection remake comes around, you may have a shot at playing one of the characters. So
Mm-hmm.
keep an eye out for that. Let's go over to trivia, Alex. Tell me about this movie. Are you gonna expand on its WrestleMania or Monday Night Raw or whatever it was, its connection?
It's truly just a SmackDown appearance that I don't even remember what ended up coming from it, but it's Busta Rhymes there to promote the movie. They used to do that a lot more, obviously, when wrestling drew in a certain demographic of younger folks. They had him on there just like, Busta Rhymes is here, and tomorrow in theaters, Halloween Resurrection. And he did an in-ring segment with The Rock where The Rock was like, Busta Rhymes here. Got a big movie coming out tomorrow, right? The Rock knows, Halloween Resurrection. The crowd's just like, eh. And in a prophetic moment also, it's kind of, funny because The Rock, it's like, well, let me ask you a question. He says something like, I know Michael Myers. Do you die in this movie? And he's like, because I know the brother always gets killed first. And Busta Rhymes says like, hell no, I kicked Michael Myers' ass. And it's like, yeah, that's what happens in the movie. It's just, The Rock at this point, he was obviously a megastar then, but now he's one of the most famous people in the world. And the idea of him, what's the name of the movie? Resurrection. Okay. Piggybacking on that, let me cover my usuals first. Directed by Rick Rosenthal, who, as we discussed in the episode, directed the original sequel in 1981. Screenplay by Larry Brand and Sean Hood. Larry Brand's original idea from this is not what we got here. So if you ever watch this movie and you feel like this seems like a different script that they just fucking shoehorned in a property to, you're on the right path there. Released on July 12th of 2002. Budget of $15 million with a box office return of short of $40 million. So while it did clear its budget, it was certainly a disappointment from what they were expecting, especially coming off the heels of H2O, which was a bonanza.
So that's really, ultimately, that's what killed it, right? Not the reception from critics.
I don't give a fuck. This movie had made $500 million. The next one would have been like Michael hosting like a music festival where he just goes through and kills people. On the Busta Rhymes tip, I did find an article that we weren't able to get into the actual episode, but it's from dreadcentral.com, February 11th, 2022. This is by Chad Collins, titled Trick or Treat, the time Busta Rhymes beat up Michael Myers. It's no secret that I have some serious problems with the mythos of Michael Myers and the Halloween franchise writ large. The studio and filmmakers, desperate to franchise John Carpenter's original Boogeyman, added almost nauseating amounts of lore, canon-defying beats, and timelines, all in an effort to bring the shape home again and again and again. Yet there's something to be said, at least in theory, for the brazen indifference towards what came before. My only problems are no secret. My problems, are no secret, though neither is my love. I love the Halloween movies, even the not-so-great ones. There isn't a single entry I don't rewatch in October or March or, well, any other month of the year. If Michael's on, I'm watching. Evil dies tonight, and in some cases, it's resurrected entirely. Case in point, Rick Rosenthal's Halloween Resurrection. The first four Friday the 13th movies all principally amount to the same thing. So much so, minus a shift in final girls and death, they're the same movie. Campers or counselors or hedonistic teens arrive, party, and are systematically picked off during the climax until only one remains, inciting a protracted chase with Jason Voorhees, or in the case of the first, his mother. Same thing can be said for Nightmare on Elm Street. Unlike Halloween, familiarity or sheer boredom preclude them from the Halloween franchise's inimitable watchability. Director Rick Rosenthal, responsible for both the best and worst sequels in the franchise, well, I don't know about that, at least had the decency to add a dollop of Busta Rhymes into Halloween Resurrection. The only entry that, had it not been for Rhymes, could have ruined the franchise's winning streak. Busta Rhymes plays Freddie Harris, a co-director for the web series Dangertainment, alongside Tyra Banks's Nora Winston. They invite a group of horny co-eds and one quasi-predator whose digital pen pal is an underage boy to the Myers house with the intent of filming their night. Hopeful they may uncover some clues behind Myers' motives. Why the Dangertainment crew thinks this group of students could conceivably accomplish this is never addressed. For as much pop psychology as they spout, they're still just horny kids looking to get some. But they've packed up and dropped off, ready for a quiet night in a murder house or not. Of course, Michael, having just killed his sister, Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, in ridiculous, infuriating fashion, is on his way home, something neither the co-eds nor Freddy anticipate. Luckily, Freddy knows Kung Fu. No, seriously. With just Freddy and his final girl, Sarah, Bianca Cashless, remaining, Freddy reaches his boiling point. He busts through the door, shouts, "Hey, Michael, trick or treat, motherfucker," and proceeds to beat the ever-living hell out of him. He jumps in the air, brandishes his fists in a quasi-karate stance, and even emits a high-pitched hi-ya as he leaps into the air to deliver a final kick. It's ridiculous, but it works. Absent Rhymes' producer, Halloween Resurrection never gets off the ground. The characters are indistinct, the kills are tame, and the tension non-existent. Like later Friday the 13th sequels, it doesn't even manage to be so bad it's good. It's simply bad. Halloween's Resurrection commits horror's cardinal sin. It's boring. And that goes for all movies, as we talked about.
Not just horror.
No. Luckily, Busta Rhymes imbues it with enough cartoonish energy to give it a pulse. He accosts Michael at one point, presuming he's a crew member screwing around, and Michael, a little punk, just takes it and even takes jabs at his baggy-ass overalls. It's incredible. There's a self-aware verve to Rhymes' performance so perfectly calibrated, it's never anything less than clear that he's in on the joke himself. Additionally, there's an argument to be made that Sarah isn't even the final girl. Freddy is. Sarah is more than useless in the final fight. A fisticuff in a burning garage. She's quickly immobilized, and were it not for Freddy's ex machina arrival, Sarah would have bit the dust. Freddy, a black man, saves the day, a rarity in the horror genre, and a beat practically non-existent in Halloween's world, a franchise whiter than Michael Myers' own mask. Not content to let bygones be bygones, though, Freddy remarks to Michael's charred corpse at the end, "Looking a little crispy over there, Mikey, like fried chicken, motherfucker." "May he never, ever rest in peace," he says, totally nonplussed by what just happened. It was another night for Freddy, the Dangertainment media superstar. Yet for the Halloween franchise, it was a high note. The last entry in Halloween's second timeline. What followed would just be remakes and reboots. At the end of the era, and the end of an era, there was no better way for the franchise to bow out than when Busta Rhymes beating the living hell out of Michael like a Marvel superhero. Past the Cavassier, indeed. So this goes to show that not everyone despises this movie, nor do they find, like, most people will tell you the Busta Rhymes performance is entertaining, but this was about the most hyperbolic thing I could find on his performance in this movie.
Do you see his point, though? Because I honestly...
There's some fair points made. It doesn't make it a good movie, but he makes some points.
Well, just the fact that everything that has come after, and I kind of just referenced it a little bit ago, but the idea that, you had the two Rob Zombie movies and then the new trilogy, but it felt like, yeah, the execution was different, but it was still just them going back to like the same. And this was maybe the last time that the franchise tried something completely different.
Yeah,
Busta, we recognize your contribution.
I mean, I would also argue that Corey was something completely different, but
Mm.
problem is, I think if you pulled a group of 100 Halloween super fans, they'd in the character elimination. You know, if you had like the tournament,
Yeah,
they'd probably take Freddy.
man, Corey is
Um,
the first one to go. He's like the
Stop.
the bottom seed, and Freddie
No,
would be at the top. But him and
Tina.
Lori.
Tina's the first to go. But again, she's the thing that makes that movie entertaining because you're waiting for her to die.
Yeah.
So we talk about it a little bit in the episode. And a lot of this stuff is off the top of my head. I always credit the Taking Shape book, fantastic book on the history of Halloween, and also the 616 Entertainment channel has some great retrospective videos on the Halloween franchise. But being as part of her holdover deal from H2O, Jamie Lee Curtis had to participate in this movie, or is contractually obligated to, I guess I would say. It was originally whittled down to supposedly they negotiated down to 30 seconds she had to be on screen, and her demand was that she got killed because she was done with this.
Okay, but explain this to me. Well, maybe there's just no way of knowing. Like, how did she? What did she think was going to happen when she made H2O? Like, did she think that
Apparently that
was
was
the
like
end
a
of it?
last minute call. Like the script that the most of those folks read was that he died at the end, and
Okay.
Mustafa Akkad, in a moment of panic, was like, all right, figure out a way to write around this so that he can live. And so, yeah, obviously her presence in the movie was a bit longer than 30 seconds, which I don't know how much, but people say it was a pretty astounding amount of money she got paid for the little part that she did in this movie. That also part of the legend is she just donated to charity.
I see.
Um, her wig, in a fitting callback to Halloween 2 that Rick Rosenthal directed, her wig is terrible as it is in Halloween 2. And disowned is an intense word, but like even as recent as the past 10 years, when asked about this movie, she refers to it as a joke. And she's obviously pretty proud of her contributions to in the first Halloween's the reason she won an Oscar a couple of years ago, you know what I mean? And in a long series of domino events. And she came back for the closing, trilogy, and or closing of that timeline, however you want to word it. But yeah, she thinks this movie's reprehensible, very, very dumb. As does John Carpenter, who said, I watched that one at the house with all the cameras. Oh my God. Oh Lord God. And then the guy gives the speech at the end about violence. What the hell? I couldn't believe it.
But he cashed the check, right, Carpenter?
Of course. That's what I've said that quote a million times on here. There's a very funny thing happens when a new Halloween movie comes out. A giant check falls into my hand. Yeah, she it was essentially like a clause in the contract that just necessitated that she come back. And so she did, and then got killed off, and that was that.
I mean, I don't know how you would make it work with 30 seconds. So I guess cooler heads prevailed, right? Once you realize that this is happening, then you might as well do it somewhat uh, in a somewhat sensible manner. Would it annoy you even more? Or at this point, I guess this movie is like it can't go any lower, right? It's not like this movie would be worse if you didn't have the Jamie Lee Curtis segment at the beginning.
Um,
I know it would
that at
bother
least
me.
adds comedy to it.
Well, like, and context. Wouldn't it just nod the back of your brain if you didn't know what happened after H2O?
I guess that's fair. Yeah.
I mean, you could just
Here
have
we
somebody
go.
tell you, I guess, but it's not the same. And
So
then she kissed him.
The dilemma started here on H2O. I'm sorry, I had my story a bit twisted there. Jamie Lee wanted that to be the end of it. Mustafa Akkad had a clause that said in the contract that they cannot kill off Michael Myers. And then they brought in Kevin Williamson to write up the ending of the movie with like the paramedic idea and whatnot. And that's how they kind of circumvented that. But then she still, had to come back to fulfill some sort of contractual obligation. And it didn't hurt that she got paid a shit ton of money, which I believe is the story on that. I think she had some sort of like a reason to come back besides just money. Yeah, context is true. And you're right. If we didn't know what happened, even though we didn't really know what happened because we thought she was going to live a normal life, but then she was ridden with guilt over decapitating this paramedic.
Well, I mean, that, and also it was, I guess, that would be manslaughter, right? No, it's murder anyway. She just happened to murder someone. So, she was going to prison anyway.
Touche.
Yeah. It's not like she voluntarily committed herself. There was a legal system at work.
And the original ending of this movie, I thought sounded cool and probably would have looked cool in execution, but it was that Michael gets burned to death. Similar to kind of what happens here, but instead of like any little sprinkling of hope that he's still alive, he sits up like he does at the end of the original when you think he's dead. He sits up, but then like a breeze or like a stiff wind comes and just blows him away because he's ash, like he had burned up to that degree. But that, of course, got rejected because that's a definitive death.
That image, that feels poetic.
I know. At the same time, I would have been mad if that was the ending of this movie. Like, how dare the ending be that good? Yeah.
All right. So, well,
yeah.
It all happened the way it had to happen, Alex.
There you go.
But that was it. That was a Halloween Resurrection. We have a full episode that recaps the movie, is very positive about it, and then we talk about it. We try to figure out what is it, if this is the worst Halloween movie, and we're not saying it is, but if it is, why? Because it's not like they're all Oscar winners until you get to Halloween Resurrection. So where is the bias? Where is the line that Halloween Resurrection apparently crosses? And do we praise Busta Rhymes even more in the episode? Well, you'll find out when you listen to it. But coming up next, our next warm-up, our next episode is the movie Green Room, starring Captain Jean-Luc Picard. I've been calling him a neo-Nazi whenever we talk about this movie. And the description I just saw calls him a skinhead. I don't know if that is the same or it's different. I guess
I always thought they were, but yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter if I'm offending a skinhead or a neo-Nazi. Either way.
Yeah.
He's a bad person. White supremacist, I guess. But anyway, he's the bad guy in the movie Green Room, also starring Anton Yelchin. And who's the actress from She's Funny That Way? Returning to the Contrarians.
Imogen Poots.
Imogen Poots. Yeah. Together again for the first time. Check that out. That movie, I haven't even checked, Alex. I'm assuming it's fresh, so we'll probably be nitpicking it.
90%.
Yeah. Ooh, nice. Okay. So Jeremy Saulnier's Green Room. That's on the docket. Watch that. Watch Halloween Restoration, because why not? We did. Listen to the episode and be ready for what's coming up next. But until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Trick or treat, motherfuckers.